Welcome to the Man Within podcast, Masculine Stories, Women Listening. We are your hosts,
Aurelia.
and Tatiana. And today we have the darling and dear Angel Gammel. Angel is a writer, storyteller, game master, masseuse, martial artist, veteran. I could go on and on. Angel is truly one of those people. When I first met him, I was like, I've never met someone like this
Hmm.
one. And I feel so honored to be able to talk to you today, Angel. Thank you so much for joining us here. We have so much we get to get into today. And we're going to just start as we always do each podcast with this prompt. So, Angel, can you describe a breakthrough moment that changed how you approach your life as a man, emotionally, relationally, or spiritually?
I can. You and I have spoken at length about many topics around this, Tatiana. The one that comes to me now, though, I'm actually going to go back further than the last time that you and I spoke. I'm actually going to go to a moment. I was 11, and I was in a chaotic, sometimes violent, extremely contentious household. And I remember looking, and I'm talking, you know, some highly educated, quite intelligent people around me, a bunch of lawyers. And I remember looking around and thinking, none of these people here have anything more figured out than I do. They just have more time and grade. Like it clicked for me that they were all just children, just like I was, except that they had more practice with the facade. Um, and that has informed. It was so some people might find that terrifying, or some people might find that reprehensible about the so-called adults around me. And I've gone through all of that, but really the important thing there, the like transformative power of that, was that I realized that no one has this actually figured out. And once I understood that, and once I embraced that, there was a daring and a willingness and a capacity in me to relentlessly pursue my own freedom in a way that I don't. It's certainly not like uniquely masculine or anything, but it was something that I hadn't seen other people doing in my reality up to that point. And so that was just a huge, huge moment for me. And there are many, many other moments in my life that followed from that. And of course, there were moments where I would become afraid and I would pull back from that commitment. And then there were times where I would reaffirm that commitment and then pull back from it. It's been a dance. I think, now that I'm nearly, I'm pulling up on 50 now, and I can say that I certainly embrace that much more often than not. But nobody really has all of this figured out. So there's still moments where I'm like, oh crap, I really don't want to do this, or I'm afraid, or I'm anxious about something, or whatever. That's part of the human experience. So that was a key moment. And when people ask me about all these other things that I've done, because I have relentlessly pursued my own freedom. So my freedom has been my pole star, which is a little weird because the relationships in my life are the most important thing in my life. And so typically that sort of person would prioritize things like stability, and community. But I've always been a dichotomy. Always been a dichotomy. Some people think of paradox. I think of it as a dichotomy. I've always had, I've been a pretty extreme person. I kind of think of myself as sitting at that intersection between intense logic and intense emotion. And I mean, you've experienced that,
Yes.
personally. And, as we've kind of gone on about the Dark Part project, and it certainly informs how I approach different interactions. Now that I'm having a new experience. I've had a new experience for the last 2 years where some, two of my closest friends, and I started to, form the startup that, you're participating in. I mean, as a player, like it's an actual play D&D show, and there's so much that goes into that, and I've learned a lot. And that was an area that I had never really experienced life in, but I I've kind of made it a point to push myself. And one of the things that I pride myself on is that I'm still pretty mentally flexible. Like some novel thing can come in, some new paradigm come in, and there is a natural tendency as one gets older to clamp down and to say no, or at least to not want to expend the effort to learn something new. And I've learning the restream software, so that is kind of the backbone of streaming a game. Like that's been eye opening. That's not something that I ever thought I was going to do either. Uh, yeah, I can trace it all back to that point of realizing that we're all just kind of, I guess it's hardly an original insight, players on a stage, and these different masks can come on and can come off. Um, it has been that has been easier for me in some ways than I think if I were a woman, because there are a lot of societal expectations both back and forth. There are also specific difficulties, because when you're alone out in the wilderness, as a man, you are alone out in the effing wilderness, and no one's going to come and save you. And I hope that doesn't sound misogynistic. Again, women have all kinds of challenges ahead of them. I'll give you an example. If a man is not in some kind of romantic relationship, particularly, a young man, like if you don't have kids, you're not having that experience, you can go months, maybe years without having any physical touch with anyone. It's crazy. And I say this as one of my many hats has been a massage therapy instructor. And so I got to see what happened. About a third of the class of the classes that I taught were guys, give or take. And the way that they would experience the surfeit of physical touch that would come from being a student in class was very different from the women. Whereas with most of the women, and again, there are exceptions to all of these, but with most of the women, they had some sort of bonds, and it was much more acceptable for them to give their friends hugs, to be in close proximity during like an emotional conversation with someone, maybe even to hold, people didn't assume that they were in in a romantic relationship with their friend if they held each other's hands during a really difficult moment. It's a fundamentally different experience. It also comes up in martial arts. I mean, when I've had different students and been training different people, men have much more of a permission to roughhouse and to throw themselves into things and to hurt other people. And that's one of the things that as a sensei that you have to overcome with women. It's like, no, if you're at the point where you're using these skills, polite conversation is grayed out on the menu option. Like this is not the time for talking. This is the time for doing. And it's kind of a different thing. So I don't know, bit of a ramble, but I think that gets the point across. Yeah.
So when you talked about, I'm just curious about this moment when you're 11, when
Sure.
you're seeing these
It's a
people in
seminal
your
moment.
life and you're seeing them as they're not free.
No.
And you're like, I'm going to get free. I would love to hear more about what that felt like for you, what that looked like for you. Like paint that picture for me a little bit better, if you can.
Sure. Well, of course, as so many things, I started out by figuring out what I didn't want to do. So what I didn't want was to be in a contentious marriage where we screamed at each other all the time. I knew that. I knew that I didn't want to have a relationship with my children that was controlling and argumentative, and quite conditional. And then finally, I knew that, and this was probably a godsend, honestly. So my birth mother was pretty, rare in the 80s, right? She was um, an Asian woman in the courthouse as a lawyer, and she had quite a formidable and well deserved, formidable reputation there. Um, I'll pass on the nickname that they used to describe her when she wasn't around. I heard that one a couple times, but she was, by all measures of the time, right? I'm talking early 80s here. She was highly successful in a way that very few women were in that moment. She was married to, if anything, and even more brilliant. My stepfather is one of the smartest people I've ever met. He's a deeply flawed human in some ways, although I still call him my stepfather, even though they've been divorced for decades. I love him. I'd help him, but like, he'd be the first to tell you he's got some trouble navigating day to day life sometimes. But they were, from the outside, they were this power couple, and both of them were lawyers, and both of them were known, and both of them were very well regarded. And yet, for all of that, Tatiana, they were miserable. We had the car, we had the nice cars, and we had the. I would say we were like solidly upper middle class at that point, not wealthy, but they could take vacations if
Abundance.
they. Yeah, there was abundance. They could take vacations that they wanted to. There were two cars. It was blah 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 blah. And but I really locked in that for all of that material abundance, that is the correct word, nobody, literally nobody in that house was happy. The parents weren't happy. I wasn't happy. My older brother was definitely not happy. My younger brother, I that drove he and I very, much closer to each other. Like we're close to this day. But like I taught him to laugh. Like when there would be screaming and throwing and everything like this, I taught him to laugh at things. And so to this day, he has a pretty dark sense of humor, but I think it has served him in good stead. And I don't know what else an 11-year-old, could teach a toddler really in terms of how to handle that. Yeah. And that really stuck with me. And so when the outside world would tell me, okay, these are the things that you need to be happy. You need a 9 to 5 job, and you need a car, and you need this nice car, and you need this big house and everything. I just rejected all of that. I didn't even really think about it. I just knew that that was not the truth. At least it wasn't for me, and it had been for everybody that I'd ever seen at close proximity. And I don't know, maybe some other time we can have a whole discussion about my relationship with Patricia, who is the mother of my heart. She gave me the keys to the kingdom. You know, she really gave me some sort of direction. And the thing that Patricia gave me was, she is a tower of integrity. She has the most integrity of any person I've ever met, probably. And she's braver than I am, actually. And I got to see her in her magnificence when she created Woman Spirit, and I got to see what it looked like
What's women's
to.
spirit?
It was the first organized women's spirituality. Well, it became a movement, but it was like the first organization that was official, that was year by year, that was incorporated, tax status, all of that stuff. And under that umbrella were all kinds of things. And like so, to this day in Austin, you still have the Festival of the Heart. Well, I mean, that started 30 years ago, and it started because of her. And there were many other people involved, and it was community. But like I saw her as the driving force, and I remember telling her as this smarmy 13-year-old, you're crazy. Like, what are you doing? This is insane. But I still got behind her, and it showed me what the power of aligning, because she had a spiritual awakening too. She was not That was not her path before then at all. And it showed me what happened when you aligned spirit with honor, and then you kind of leavened it with courage. And she, in my estimation and in many people's estimation, she has substantially changed the history of the Southwest of the United States of America because of that. Potentially further than that, but that I can say with high confidence, having seen it with my own eyes. She gave 55 years, 55 years of public service. She's retired now. God bless her. It's only now that I'm really finding that. She found it much earlier than I did. I don't know if that's a measure of circumstance or a defect in my own character, or whatever. But I'm now like professionally telling stories, and I hope that in the best tradition of something like old school Star Trek, I'm telling I'm telling deep stories that provoke people into thinking and invite them to reflect. Dark Port's just one way of doing that, but I'm working on some written pieces, and I'm thinking about, I'm feeling like a deep need to contribute, to give back, to not make it to make it better for the people who come after me, and not have them have to deal with all the same crap that I did, frankly. And they'll have their own struggles. Every generation has the struggles. Every generation is called to a different kind of action. But man, you know, I miss teaching. I really miss teaching massage because there were so many different things. The school closed down over COVID. I wouldn't have quit that job. I'd still be there doing that right now. Anything that you can do though, like that freedom that I have achieved, like it allows me now to spend the time and to have the energy and to have had the life experiences to really speak to a broad swath of of humanity, particularly young men. That's kind of where I find myself spending a lot of time, because I think that we've had conversations before, but like I think that that's where I can do the most good, and there is certainly a huge need for that right now. As our culture has become more and more atomized, more and more separated out, more and more isolated, women have shown a resiliency to that isolation, not immunity, but they've shown a resiliency in that there are still meaningful emotional connections. There are a lot of young men, y'all, a lot of young men who they have, business acquaintances. They have no close friends or a very small circle, which is fine if that's what you choose, but like they're not necessarily choosing that. And then I'm sure y'all have seen like the stats of just how dating is tanking, and there are many reasons why this is going on, but I see the reality of it, and I find it pretty concerning
Yeah,
as we go forward.
definitely. And when you talk about freedom, Angel, I'm
Mm.
really sticking with this word that you brought up.
No, no, no. It's a good one.
Um, because growing up, you're seeing that there's a lack of freedom, which you didn't say this, but you're kind of equating it to a certain level of happiness or a certain level of perhaps harmony, contentment.
That man, that's a good catch, Tatiana. Just so one of my underlying beliefs is that I would rather be dead than not be free. I don't. God, that makes me sound like, so that these words have been co-opted by
Live free
a
or
lot.
die. Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
just right. I'm just talking about like literally. I need the capacity to make my own decisions. We all live in a context. We all live in a context. So the thinking that you have full control of your life, that's a fantasy. Nobody has control of your life. I could have an aneurysm right now. You know, I'm talking about meaningful choices, though. That's what I mean. And a good chunk of my life's work has been about giving people tools so that they can make those choices, even if there's choices that I don't agree with. That's almost irrelevant, really. Martial arts is one. I mean, it means many things to me. It's been a savior to me. It means that you can maintain physical autonomy over your body. That's a big deal. I grew up in a physically, among other things, a physically abusive household, and so learning that and being able to literally and metaphorically fight back much earlier than I guess you shouldn't have put me in those Taekwondo lessons, Elena. Like learning how to fight back much earlier than what the typical situation is, or some people never do, was essential to reclaiming. This is so hackneyed and used, but it's true here, to reclaiming my power. It really was, Um, it's like, nope, you're never doing that again to me. That is the last time. And it also, when you can draw those hard boundaries against your own flesh and blood, your parental figures, you can do that with anybody. You really can. And that was an essential part of this freedom. And yeah, I mean, it's massage therapy. I'm captain my own ship, and yeah, sure, sometimes money's tight, sometimes people can't make it, sometimes whatever, but it's not even close to me. Some people completely disagree with that, but like, I have a roof over my head. I have the books that I want to read. I have beautiful, amazing friends and relationships. I've had a rich. No one can say that my life has been. I mean, it's been experientially impoverished. I've danced naked with a cow pelvis over my head. I've, waged a war across, on a different continent. I've stood in the majesty of true magic and in the presence of greatness before. If I died now, I would still say that I feel like I've lived at least 100 years, probably more, you know? And some of that are all the different jobs that I've had, but I've learned something from each of them. When I was a chauffeur, that gave me a very different perspective on things. When I was a combat medic, naval hospital corpsman, for those of you who know, but I was a combat medic in the Navy assigned to the Marine Corps Infantry over in Iraq, 2003, 2004. I saw a lifetime there. The current adventure of being a streaming GM, that's a thin slice of humanity, hon. That's a thin slice of humanity that has that particular experience. And having all of these different experiences, that's what freedom is to me. I never would have had the chance to do that if I had locked into a quote unquote respectable career. And it's not like I'm allergic to money. I mean, I understand you have to have it to survive, but like, it to me, that was shown very clearly, again, to go back to 11, like, that's not the point of living. That's not the point of breathing. Each of us has a very limited time on this earth. I'm also an armchair historian. I joke about my largely useless degree in history, but what that training has done is it's really puts in context each of our lives. It's such a brief, beautiful, inherently tragic thing, each human being, you know. And even if I live to be 120, which is my current floor, I'm a greedy mother. I want life. I want to know. I want to learn. I want to live. I want to experience. I want to see it all, and I want to see it from all different perspectives. I've been the young man now. I've been the young buck. I've been the 30 something. I'm in my 40s now. I'm really looking forward to my 50s. I think it's going to be an amazing time of life, where you just have, one thing is, you just have less and less and less to prove every year to somebody. I don't care anymore. I really don't care if people think, if I'm not living up to my potential, or I'm not, whatever. Like, all of that just is, to mix some metaphors, dust in the wind to me. And I rejoice in what I've been able to experience because of that freedom. Somebody else could have attained that freedom, and they could have done something completely different with it, and would have, almost certainly would have done something utterly different with it. Um, and Godspeed to them. I know I'm an extreme. There's the this thing, like, everybody thinks, everybody's the center of their own universe. I actually knew growing up that I was not the center of the universe. My older brother was bigger, faster, stronger, tougher, and smarter than me. Always, he's 7 years older than me. He was a lion among men. He would instantly command any room that he went into. I won't go into all of his stuff. He's a sergeant in the Marine Corps. He could bench 400 pounds at the same time as running a sub 18-minute 3 miles, which is almost impossible physically for somebody who's not an Olympic athlete. He's a tremendous specimen. He also wound up completely isolated. He can't stand people. He has a home library he spends most of his time in, and it's tragic, sad at least, that he chooses that isolation, and he's gotten completely locked in. And as you can tell, like, the family that I was born with, there were some really remarkably capable people who wound up achieving very little, if I'm honest, in terms of furthering the understanding of the species of itself, if I can be that pretentious. You know,
And you think that's important?
it's vital. Why else are we here? I don't have children. I may feel differently if I had children. But even in that, I would hope that everyone who has children wants those children to understand themselves better than the parents did at that time. I hope. And that's kind of, I
Mhm.
mean, if I had to try to, I know we're kind of swinging around, but like, if I had to try to sum that up and crystallize it, humanity has a glorious destiny ahead of us. if we have the wisdom and the courage to seize it. Our I told you I run pretty hot. I'm going to get emotional here. I always do when I'm thinking about this. Ad Astra, Ad Astra per Aspera. I'm butchering that. Through adversity to the stars, and that's, as I see it, that's our destiny. I mean, with this is planet Earth is our crib and is the cradle of humanity. But eventually a species is going to leave its cradle. That doesn't, at the same time, that doesn't mean that I want to trash the earth and we just, need to, act like a virus and go from one host to another at all. Quite the contrary. This is our sacred beginning place. This is our home. This should always be maintained in a way that the next generation can benefit from it just the same way that we did. But there is a destiny for us. And I feel very much part of the greater project of humanity, even when I'm dealing with the everyday, the quotidian affairs of everyday life, where you're trying to pay rent and you're trying to you're trying to figure out how to make Zoom work on your computer, and you're all of these things. That higher purpose, that higher, can you call it a meaning? I don't know. That higher thought, though, that paradigm, that never leaves me. Actually, I don't know if I've ever told you that before, Tatiana. It never leaves me. It's always some part in my mind. It's there. And one more time, I don't think that space could exist if I was worried about climbing up a corporate ladder. For me, I know for some people it can. For me, it couldn't have. That's just the way that my brain works.
That makes sense.
I was kind of mulling over the idea that, certainly at, age 11, you had this moment of inspiration, of realization, and you sound like you've been able to navigate and maintain your focus on that freedom that you determined at that time was very important for you.
Mm-hmm.
But in reflecting back upon, and we're having a discussion about this a little bit earlier about young men in our society today, what do
Oh,
you
yeah.
feel are the biggest shackles for them? What could possibly contribute to their awakening, allowing them to, seize the freedom that you are so happily flowing through?
Aurelia, that is, for my money, that is the vital question that we have to answer as a society in the next 10 to 20 years. We must. We must. Because if we don't solve that, we see what the trend lines are: suicide rates, addiction rates, societal instability, less and less children being born, less and less happy relationships, less and less human happiness. You know, nobody benefits, like literally nobody benefits when young men are not doing well. Young women certainly don't benefit. Their mothers don't benefit. Their coworkers don't benefit. All of it. So I wish that I had like a silver bullet for you. I know that connectivity is crucial, whether people like to admit it or not. And I'm about as independent as it comes. We are social animals. We are social creatures. There are times and maybe even eras for isolation, but that is not how you live a successful life. And I'm not talking about money and approbation. I'm talking about being a whole human. There's also that self-knowledge is so much more important than I think a lot of young men understand. And they are not, we don't teach meditation in school. We don't teach self-care in school. We don't teach interpersonal conflict resolution at school. Those are all like basic things that are much more important. Apologies to my 11th grade chemistry teacher. Like, those are all more important than some of the more academic and esoteric things that are taught in the schools, let me say, in what's left of the schools. And that's not going to change, right? I don't have any control of the soon to not be existent Department of Education. And so all I can do is I can spread these ideas as far and as wide as possible. And so some of the things that I think these young men can do, you have to find your quest. It's in your DNA. Like, you have to find the thing in your 20s, no matter what you were given before. Actually, let me back up one step. Nobody controls what they were born into. You're born into that context, you deal with that context the best that you can. And I had it worse than some, far better than many others. All right, far better. Regardless of where you're coming from, the very first thing you're trying to do, you're trying to make the weight of the choices that you have made, the weight of the choices that you have enacted, heavier as an adult, as a person with agency, whenever that starts from you. For me, it started early. You're trying to make that heavier on the balance scale than the baggage of what you were given. Now, normally, when you are not conscious about this process, that doesn't happen for a guy until he's somewhere around 30. Somewhere right in there is when I stopped giving people a pass, even if they were not raised consciously, on, okay, he's just, you've got your daddy issues, you've got your mommy issues, you've got entitlement issues, whatever. It's like, you need to start. It's like, at this point, you have now made more choices. You can get there much faster, though. So that's the first piece, is be conscious of, if you're in a situation that's not ideal or even just, difficult as a young man, you become captain of your own destiny as soon as you can, whatever that looks like. Then find what your quest is. You have to go on that quest. They go crazy, Aurelia. They go crazy. And I'm thinking of some people I've been very close to, who I loved, and I could not help in the final analysis. And my God, did I try. There are all kinds of addictions. There are drug addictions, there are porn addictions, there are distraction addictions, there are sex addictions, there are all kinds of things that will pull you off of that path and be totally disruptive in you knowing yourself, actually knowing yourself. And if you do not have struggle in a healthy way, in a good way, in a needful way, if you're not applying yourself, if you're not exerting yourself, you don't go out and you don't slay that dragon. War is hell, and I wouldn't wish what I saw and went through on anyone. But having survived it, it was transformational. And I knew that anything that I ever did in my life after that would never be that difficult as being a combat medic in a literal war zone. This may not be actionable. I mean, and it begs a whole set of other questions about, well, how do you find your quest? And, how do you get the resources for it? And, all of that stuff. And those are all big questions. I'm not trying to elide over those or pretend that those are not barriers, that they don't exist. But they're always, like, another thing is kind of a Buddhist precept, like, there's always going to be pain, man. The pain is not optional. The pain is going to come. What's optional is the satisfaction. What's optional is the self-determination. What's optional is finding the joy. That's optional. The pain's going to come. Everybody's going to get sick. Everybody's going to have bumps and bruises. Everybody's going to get yelled at. Everyone's going to be betrayed. Everyone's going to be disappointed. That's part of the human condition, man. At least as the world exists right now. I don't believe that those are inherently human. I don't think that things like betrayal are inherently human. Let me be clear on that. Where we find ourselves now and where we're going to be in the foreseeable future, those are realities. And if you focus on those negatives, they will just grow and grow and grow. You got to find the things that make your heart sing, that feed your soul, and that will allow you to get through some tough times. There's some wild stuff going on for me right now professionally. And that's okay, because I know what my mission is. I will absorb whatever responsibilities I need to. I will deal with, all of that. That's all within my capacity. But I'm able to do that because I know what my mission is. I know what I'm doing and why I'm here and what I'm driving toward. I cannot overstate the power of finding your purpose. It is a central necessity for, as far as I have seen, a central necessity for in for an evolved human, even if that purpose is solely contemplation. That too is a purpose. It's a purpose. It's not, and this is where I'm people be like, oh, you're parsing words. It's not necessarily a destination, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
but it is a purpose.
Hmm.
Because destinations, that's that's a whole different thing, and those can change, and those can be influenced by humans. But what's in you, and what is your, like, deeply held motivation and your mission, those are yours. Once you own yourself,
Yeah.
those are not things that other people really can interfere with. Not really, not unless you allow it. There's a beautiful Eleanor Roosevelt quote: "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And I would broaden that to say, no one can make you doubt your mission without your consent.
Really beautiful, Angel. And, I see you kind of weaving a tapestry here on the concept of freedom in a lot of different directions. And, yeah, like trauma is real. People have been dealt
Yeah,
a lot of hard hands
yeah.
collectively right now.
Some of them
And I
horrible.
really,
Yeah,
and what I really respect about what you're sharing here is this choice that you made to put down what was given to you and pick yourself, pick your mission, pick the challenge and finding the satisfaction in it, the strengthening, the sharpening
and
of you.
importantly, it's something that you have to pick again and again and again. There's there are two words in, I want to say the Talmud, but I might be wrong on that. But it's from the Jewish spiritual tradition, and there are two words that sometimes ring in my head: choose life. And so I choose to live. I choose to be here. I choose to be engaged again and again and again. Some days that's waking up and you're lucky to have me. Uh, I have I have showered my body. I have put clothes on, and that's what you're getting that day. And that's okay. I'm still choosing to be here, And then other days I'm kicking ass. But yeah, it's something you have to do again and again and again. It's not a choice that you make one time, because you will be challenged innumerable times in life about
Right.
that, and you just get to pick it again and again and again, but it does become a deeper groove.
Which I find very, very powerful, Angel, because what my perspective, and I'm curious if
Mm.
you agree, Aurelia, I think we're in a collective where there's actually not a lot of choosing life, like this like vital essence of,
Right,
like you're
right.
saying, like bettering ourselves, not just for financial gain, not just for clout, but for the love of humanity, for the love of being alive. Like there's been so much burdening and understandable, been so
Yeah,
much like compiled stuff that I think has weighed us down quite a lot, men and women, and
absolutely.
has kind of created this sentiment of like, I hate people and life kind of sucks and like we're just trying to get through it. And I feel like there's such a difference when, because I have that same sentiment that you're talking about, where I'm like, whoa, when I really do choose my life, wow, it's a very different speed, sensation, experience than when I'm just trying to make it through.
If you're exhausted and afraid all the time, life kind of does suck. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of awful. And that's why it's like, man, don't take my word for it. See how you feel. See how you feel when the things that you are enduring and the and energy that you're putting out is toward what you want it to be. And that mission can be grand. It can be as grand as getting us off the planet, inventing warp drive and getting us off the planet. And it can be as small as lovingly and passionately and superbly raising a family. But that is your mission. That is your choice. Those are your decisions. And that's massive. It's a massive difference. And you will find that humanity can endure Just the same way that people can endure virtually anything if they know that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, people can accomplish virtually anything if they know, if that's what they're choosing to do, and you're not trying to force them or intimidate them or scare them or exhaust them into doing it.
I keep thinking back on that 11-year-old boy,
Mm.
and it
So
makes
do
me
I.
it,
So do I.
yeah, I can imagine. I it makes me wonder about what are those necessary pieces that are missing from the conversation about raising boys to men. And the the message that I hear from you is that disconnection. Because even now as an adult, I for myself know that I make the most progress when I'm able to connect authentically with other people and they
Absolutely.
reflect back to me their own struggles. And when we're relating authentically, then we see each other for who we really are. You know, each of us in our own reality and our own challenges that are very individual. It does seem as though if that little 11-year-old boy had been able to connect with or learned how to connect with the people around him in a certainly in a much healthier way, in a loving way, then he wouldn't have been felt the need to be so reactive, you know, as far as I'm going to choose a different reality for myself.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're spot on. What was given to me was so repugnant. I knew that that's not what I wanted. And I know, again, this has kind of almost become a meme or a trope at this point, but like, boys really need their fathers. They really need someone showing up for them. They really do need to be shown, hey, this is what it is to be a sane, honorable man. It's
Yeah.
huge. Obviously, girls need their mothers to show up as well. But from everything that I've ever read, Aurelia, and everything that I have listened to, girls are more resilient in that way than boys. So if they have a bad relationship with their mother, they are much more likely to recover from that in the fullness of time. Whereas with men, and this has to do with also how, like, how emotion, what behaviors are acceptable, how emotions show, all of these things, but like, they're much more likely to go down a darker path. The boys are. They might still be successful, but they're not necessarily successful at things you would want them being successful at. And that's one component to it. Another component is the community around them. Because if you're not getting it there, if you're not getting it home, if that's just not an option for whatever reason, like, please, I hope that there are some sort of mentors. I hope that there are some sort of, again, it's just kind of a trope, positive male role model, but it's like, no, like, it really is a thing. It was eye opening. I mean, I was hardly naive when I started teaching massage, but like, it was eye opening to me how often I would have these guys stay after class and ask me about stuff that I was talking about. And it could be everything from, how do I run a successful business? Like, hey, I don't want to work for anybody else. I want, it could be something like that. And that's super important. And it can even be like, how are you comfortable? How are you so comfortable around women? And because there's none of, I mean, we're talking a massage school, right? I mean, people are getting naked beneath a sheet all the time, and yet there's never any, I've been a massage therapist now for 3 years. And I've apprenticed to my dad, that whole thing, like, never a problem, nothing, like, literally 0 times, 33 years. And it's just, there is just a certain way that you carry yourself, and a confidence at the one hand, and then a protectiveness on the other, that as a man, that I attempt to embody when I'm around women. That I really try to listen, I really try to meet them where they're at and to understand. And at the same time, there is just like an underlying protectiveness, nothing patronizing, at all. It's just an underlying protectiveness. It's a very powerful combination. That is not something that most young men these days, not only forget having that modeled, like, that's not even discussed. I don't even think the sentences that I just gave to you, that last paragraph that I just gave to you, a lot of them haven't even been exposed to that.
Wow.
And no, I'm serious. Like, it hurts my heart talking about this, and then it's a very easy pathway after that to go to, well, I hate them. I don't understand them. I hate these women. These women are like this and they're like that. And, all of these things. The whole thing is tragic to me because obviously the young women are interested in having relationships as well. They're having interested in having actual connections, even if it's not romantic, like just having actual connections with the men around them. Of course, I mean, of course, that's the most human thing in the world. Yeah, and that's and when you're not getting it home and you're not getting it there, it's like I haven't figured that part out. I don't have that part figured out, but like there's probably some discussion in there about mass media. There's probably some discussion in there about the kind of archetypes of men that we have in the larger culture. And even then, there has to be a way of bringing it out. It has to be a way of like embodying it. And current leadership. I mean, current leadership of any gender of like having extraordinary leaders is pretty rare right now. I mean, maybe it always has been, but it seems like particularly there's a particular shortage of that right now. And for men specifically, I mean, look at what the current moment is giving them. If you're coming of age now as a guy and you're looking around and you didn't get it at home, it's slim pickings. I'll say that. It's slim pickings out there to like, yeah, I want to model myself on this person. That's why I go back to this idea that no matter how hard it is, no matter how many years it takes you, you find your quest, you find what that mission is, and you drive on it. And yeah, and then maybe you finish that quest, and then at that point, though, you can look around, because I came home from war, right? I was 27 when I got out of the military. That's still a pretty young guy. And so I looked around and I said, all right, I have done the thing, because every male in my family, going back 3 generations, maybe more, all of us have been in the military. We've all served. It's just something that you did. But it was much more than that by the time I got out. And I was damn proud. Politically, I'm quite iconoclastic. I'm heterodox. I'm all over the place. And I was really damn proud of having served my country. I was. And I felt like I had, I don't know, earned my place or something, because there's this whole thing about earning, like I had earned my place. But I got out at 27 and I'm like, well, I know that I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in the military. I knew that. I wanted to do other things. Nobody can tell me that I'd slacked off on my civic duty to the country. So what do I do? And then you have to reevaluate. But I had the capacity, and it was, I don't want to glamorize it. Those first couple years, the first year especially, was hell. That was rough. That was bad. That was me white knuckling PTSD. Do not recommend. you know, and that also, though, Aurelia, is a reflection of the institutions that we have. Because guess what access I had to counseling? Guess what access I had to therapy as a veteran? Guess what access I had to any sort of mental health resources beyond what I already knew in terms of martial arts and yoga and meditation? That would be zero. That'd be zero. And I'm coming out of an active duty. I'm literally coming out of a war zone, and then they expect me 5 months later to reintegrate into civilian society. It was hard. It was really hard. And that, unfortunately, the last time, because I have some, well, he's retired now, but I had some friends who did the long run in the military. And when they retired a couple years ago, when the last of them retired a couple years ago, they told me, it really hasn't changed. And that is not surprising to me, given where we're at culturally. But it's completely incorrect. If for nothing else, that you do not want these dangerous, still young men who have been trained how to kill people and how to inflict violence reintroduced back into a civilian society without correctly and appropriately reintegrating them. You have to. It's really stupid not to. I won't go into any of the horror stories about that, but they're there. They're there, and I saw some of them, and it's not good outcomes. I was blessed because I had that background in martial arts. I had Patricia, who was a priestess, and more importantly, in that case, she had been through all of this with the men in her life through the Vietnam War, and so she knew what to expect when I came back. I would have been in a very bad place without her, and she didn't expect me to explain everything, and I could just be with her, and she could meet me where I was at. And you want to talk about the whole premise of y'all's project, right? Men speaking, women listening. It's like that probably saved my life. I mean, it was, or at least it made it far more bearable and me far better of a person to be around during that time period. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but speaks to your point. But I mean,
and just to clarify, Patricia is...
she was my legal guardian, but I consider her birth mother. That didn't work out so well. And then Patricia, I guess she technically wasn't my guardian until 15, but I was living with her from 13 on. Yeah. Somebody would have died in that house. I mean, somebody would have died in that house. Like it was bad. There were addictions going on there. And you wrap back to my earlier point, and these are people who had everything that you quote unquote were supposed to have, right? I mean, these were two lawyers. They were very well connected in the community. And judges over all the time, county figures out over time, city council, whatever, city council, and that did not make them happy. The last thing I'll say on this is what Patricia allowed me to do. She gave me the tools to become my own parent, and that is not a fair thing to ask a child. But sometimes, fellas, it's a needful thing that you just have to do. It doesn't matter if it's fair. You just do it. You do it because it's needful, because the alternative is unlivable. It's also not safe for the people around you if you care about them.
You say more about being your own parent and what that looked like for you specifically.
Man. Well, there are two main lines on that. The first line is to understand, I guess you would call this the masculine line, is to understand that no one's coming to save you. There is no Calvary. There is no Deus ex machina. You have to save yourself, period. And once you accept that, and once you understand that, I mean, really internalize it, you now have given yourself permission to think in ways and to do things that you couldn't have done before. And there have been so many times in my life where I have said, I have no friggin' idea how I'm going to make rent this month, but I'm going to do it. And you know what? Every single time I have. And I'm in a more stable place now, but for many years, that was not the case. Ironically enough, my 5 years in the military were the most financially stable years of my life. Except for the very end, when I had a very lovely ex-wife who emptied out the bank accounts and betrayed me while I was overseas. It was good times. Yeah, be really, 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 really careful. This is for men and women both. Be really careful about who you marry, if you choose to marry. That is, I think, the only other decision in your life that will impact you personally like that is whether or not you have children. Arguably more than that or less, whatever, but it'd be like children. I mean, it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. Had to cycle that out and get back to trusting people. That was not easy. But once you understand that, then you can start like, okay, if I can't figure out, back to the cars thing, if I can't figure out how to put this alternator in, nobody's going to help me. I don't have the money to take this to a shop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Chilton's guide with me. I'm going to go over to AutoZone. I'm going to use the last money that I have in my account. I have 17 cents in my account after I buy this alternator. And we're just going to sit out there and we're going to figure out how to install this alternator. And that's what you do, because you have to. And you learn whatever the skills are that you need to learn to be successful so that you can thrive in your environment, whatever that means to you. And if you want to be a multimillionaire and that's what you want to pursue, God bless, go do it. For me, it was my time. I wanted my time. I was jealous of my time. I still am. And I want to wake up. It is, you know what? It is a successful week for me when I can sleep as late as I want and wake up naturally without an alarm. Think about that. That's power. That's power. And Tatiana, personally, I'm doing a whole bunch of different crap right now. But I have my life structured in such a way that I can go to sleep whenever the hell I want and wake up whenever the hell I want. Now, I don't, but I can. And I like that. Sometimes it gets me in trouble because I'm a vampire, but, and then finally on the masculine side, you're your own advocate. You're your own advocate. And so if you wouldn't tolerate someone betraying your best friend, don't tolerate it in you. If you wouldn't tolerate someone lying to your best friend, don't tolerate it for you. And if someone's running you down or attacking you or undermining you, you have to be the person to stop it because nobody else is going to do it for you. You don't have a father to step in like that. You don't have a mother to step in like that to help you. You just have to do it. Now, obviously, this applies more to younger people, but this was a huge part of the process. On the more kind of becoming your own mother, there's a concept in Wicca called the sacred marriage, which is where you take the masculine and the feminine elements inside of yourself and you weld them together. It's a very similar thing that I'm talking about here, except that you're taking the parents, you're taking the father and the mother, and you're welding them together inside of yourself. And there, you have to be the one to nurture yourself. You have to be the one to give yourself permission to rest. You have to be the one to reflect on things and say, wow, that's not the interaction I wanted to have with her. Okay, what went sideways? And then you sit with it and you have the courage to, it's a different kind of courage, but you have the courage to say, yeah, I was an asshole. Or, yep, I was being really narrow-minded there. I need to rethink this. I need to rethink how I'm approaching this. Because you're not going to get, unfortunately, you're not going to get that from the maternal figure in your life, who should be the person to counsel you on those things, who should be able to give you truly sage advice, even wisdom, if I dare say. And those are things that you just have to start doing that, especially as a man in the culture. Part of the reason back in the 90s, I said, I was a ardent feminist is because I wanted to be able to paint with all the colors of the wind. I wanted to be able to, not just the reds and the oranges of anger, but I wanted to paint with all of it. I wanted to be fully human. And I think I've largely succeeded there. But part of becoming your own mother that way is like I said, is exploring that and pulling all of that in. And you may not know how to do that at first, and that's okay. Ignorance is not shameful. Even though other people try to shame you for being ignorant, ignorance is not shameful. Willful ignorance is. Those are two entirely different things. So if you don't know how to do something, the information there, the one good thing, the one like stellar thing I will say about the moment we're living in is we have access to more information more easily now than at any other time in the human experience, period. So you can find virtually anything now. You just have to kind of use your sense and vet if it's quality stuff or not. But you can find healthcare regimens now. You can find stuff on food. You can find advice on how to deal with narcissists. You can find some really actually very good advice on how to deal with if you're dealing with somebody who's just under kneecapping you and trying to manipulate you and stuff like that. All of those things. So does that help elucidate the matter?
Yes, it does.
Love
And
that.
what I'm hearing you say too is because there's so much knowledge out there. There's so many
Too
ways, we have so
much.
much choice. And I think it's a beautiful thing and it's a very challenging thing
Yeah.
because, oh, I can do anything. I can go be with the circus. I can go call myself a name that wasn't given to me and
Don't tempt me,
uh,
Tatiana.
right? Flip my whole world upside down. But what I love about what you're saying about being your own parent, which, yes, you were very young to do that. But I think essentially we all have to get there, right? Like
You do.
essentially it's necessary. And what I love about that is that it's so primally, fundamentally human, right? We are our mother and our father come together, whether you like them or not, whether you like that concept or not. It's the nature of who we are. We have masculinity through us, we have
Yeah.
femininity through us, and it's balancing those energies, right? It's taking responsibility for having our good boundaries, having our vision, having our clarity, pushing ourselves in the rightful way, and also tending to ourselves. And yes, being a full human. And yes, no matter what your gender is, you have emotion for a reason.
Yeah.
You need to rest. You need to be kind to yourself. And I think in a world of so much choice, that is just such easy and supportive pillars to come back to. That
And
isn't
it's
that
a
complicated.
no, it's not. It's not. And it becomes simpler when you look at how much of those choices, you're absolutely correct that there is a bewildering array of choice. How much of that choice is empty calories? A lot of it.
Junk
A lot of it.
food.
A lot of it. It's you're looking at it and sure, I can I spend 5 hours a day looking at YouTube video after YouTube video? Absolutely. I'm a bit of a political junkie. And so I have to really monitor my diet on that, or I will just go crazy on that. Scorpio dragon here, if you know the Chinese zodiac, so it's like bit of an extreme, bit of an extreme personality. But when you hone, like, what are the things that are going to get me closer? What are the things that are going to support? What are the things that are going to enhance what my quest is, what my mission is? And there can be many, many, and you don't need to get myopic about it. Like, you can have that very loosely tied in. And during your periods of rest and have fun, relax, spend time with a beautiful person like Tatiana. And you can just kind of chill. And I don't think anyone would accuse us of having vapid conversation.
I have a question. I think on the flip side of that, because certainly
Yes, ma'am.
we're looking at accountability, right, being
Mm.
important. But I'm curious, at this point in your life, who are your heroes? Do you have any heroes?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The way that I think about heroes has changed, but many substantially. But it's funny, Aurelia. Actually, you know what? Thank God. Thank you for asking that question. Many of the heroes that I have now are the same heroes I've had for decades. So, Alexander the Great, arguably the most competent human to ever draw breath, polymath, undefeated on a field of battle, the greatest swordsman in personal combat of his time, incredibly generous, valued compassion and sparing the lives of the people that he quote unquote should have killed at a time. This was, before that concept was really in the culture. This is long before Christianity. Pious, loved his mother. All of these things. Had one of the great romances in history, two of them actually. And sure, he had his flaws, but what I value about him now, beyond all, so as a young man, those were fascinating, of course. Those were endlessly fascinating to me, right? I'm hardly alone in that. What I value in him now is that at the very end of his life, which was entirely too brief, it's like 33, 34, depending on when you believe exactly he was born, dating that far back can be a little hard. He had articulated a very clear view of the universal brotherhood of man. And he had solved some problems that are plaguing us about how he actually solved the problem of how you get two different sets of people to integrate with each other. He also invented amphibious warfare. He also revolutionized siegecraft. I mean, there's a reason why I say he probably the most competent human to ever draw breath, but he figured that out. And he set aside his own cultural teachings to make that happen. And there is a powerful message in that. There is a powerful example in that you can. I'm not Alexander the Great, but I can learn from his greatness. And I can see that, okay, this is what you were taught as a Macedonian noble at this time. But you saw the necessity of this if there was ever going to be an end to this constant conflict and constant destructive back and forth, how you had to put that aside and you had to become something else. That's a huge one for me. And I still am learning from his various exploits and adventures and all of that. I don't know if I would say that Patricia is one of my heroes, but she is heroic. And perhaps I know her too intimately, and I have seen her get her ass kicked. I have seen her in the dregs of despair, and I have seen her shining with the full majesty of the Great Mother, rolling, like cracking from her like rolling thunder when she's doing ritual, and have felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And both of those are her, and both of those are true. Those are both accurate representations of her. Even if I disagree with some of her strategies, even if we don't agree with everything politically, it's fine. Because that person has given me the keys to the kingdom. I mean, just really shown me what that looks like. That's debatable. There are a couple of other ones in there that are more specialized. Like there's some particular martial artists that I really admire. Some of the Elizabeth, I call her Elizabeth the Great, but Elizabeth I, who saw the one single pathway that there was for her country, surrounded by other countries that were far more militarily powerful. And she chose, and she basically forged Britannia Incorporated. She basically went the route of trade. As long as the English followed that pathway, they became the preeminent power, and then they kind of lost their way and degenerated. But anyway, so there There are people throughout history that I seek out and I try to learn from them. I really do. I made a 10-year study on power. A person of our mutual acquaintance, Tatiana, has urged me to write that down repeatedly. And it was interesting because there are quite predictable rhythms of power. And there are quite consistent ways that you maintain power and that you lose power, and also different sources where power comes from. As I'm attempting to shift the culture at least somewhat, I don't necessarily completely, I don't want to just, I don't want to start a cult. I have no interest in just recapitulating kind of what I see as corrupt or low vibration expressions of power. But understanding how power flows was very important. And so you have maestros who are they were not necessarily good people, but you have like Cardinal Richelieu, and you have Chairman Mao, and you have these people who like really Lenin. I just read a really interesting biography on Lenin. I love biographies because they tell you both about the person and the time that they're in, and it shows you how they approached power and where they failed and where they succeeded, and then also what the cost was. If there's one thing that I would want to add to this that I haven't said yet, it's that we are in dire need of a rethinking of leadership in this moment. When I am leading, I try to make it so that when I walk into a room, my needs as the leader are the least important needs of anyone in the room. And that the people in that room, their needs and their moment and their dynamic is more important than my needs. And to do that kind of leadership takes a tremendous amount of strength. And it's why to actually embody those kinds of that kind of ideal, you have to be in a powerful place to be able to do that. You really do. It's much easier to be craven and cupidious and just want to get what's yours and prioritize yourself over the people around you when you're in a position of power. That's the easiest thing in the world, to exploit other people. The hardest thing is to build them up and to protect them and to teach them while they're on their own journeys. So I know that's a whole other discussion, but I want to get that out there, that like the whole narrative that we have, we're not going to make it another 5,000 years. They're, roughly 5,000 years of recorded history. You can quibble about that, maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 10. We're already past the halfway point if we just continue business as usual. So we've got to shift how we approach power, leadership, all of that stuff, and that's another thing. And that does absolutely wrap back into what you're modeling for, what I'm modeling, and what just writ large the culture is modeling for young men as they're coming up, because they have to do a little better. I mean, they're struggling to even do as well, but like they have to do a little bit better, and I mean that's the hope, right? That each generation does a little bit better and learns a little bit more and gets us a little further down the yard. Y'all are some delightful people, you know that?
Yeah. So are you, Angel. And I just want to note and appreciate your devotion and dedication to your quest. I love that word. I don't ever use it. So
That's real.
I've been enjoying hearing it today. Quest.
As a wordsmith yourself, yes.
Yeah, and it's a good word. It's a good word. I think purpose sometimes can feel a bit like, oh, like it can be a bit daunting. It
Mm-hmm.
can feel like really big, and am I living in my purpose? Whereas quest to me feels like there's something that I'm up to. Maybe I'll get another assignment, but I'm going to follow through.
A quest has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end.
Yeah.
So you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
And that's so beautiful. And I see you with your devotion to learning, to giving yourself what you weren't given. I mean, this was taught to me by my mentor. She told me one of the greatest feelings of your life is giving yourself what you were not given.
Oof,
It is like the
powerful.
most satisfying full circle moment, so empowering. Just completely changes the narrative of poor me, I can't believe what I've been through, into
Yeah.
I'm giving myself this. And that's a simple quest on its own that everyone right now, anyone who's listening, can sit for a moment and say, right, what's that thing that I never got? What's something that I still haven't experienced? I can put that on my screen as something I get to give myself, something I get to give my children, my friends, my family, etc. I see that you've done that and that you continue to do that and that you're also quite devoted to humanity, men and women. And I just want to thank you so much for that devotion. It's very felt
Hmm.
by everyone in your life, I would say. I don't know everyone in your life, but I know a lot of them, and it's very felt. So thank you, Angel.
That's about the best compliment I could ask for, Tatiana. Thank you for expressing that to me. That means a lot. For some reason, I'm feeling moved to say self-pity is poison. It's poison. Drink it if you gotta, but it's no good for you. And it's literally never going to solve any of your problems, or give you any greater insight into them either. Let's just,
True.
yeah. No, I mean it's something there. Who doesn't love to wallow in a bit of self-pity? But
Well, we got to look at the thing, right? We all need to address what needs to be addressed. We all need to tend to ourselves. But self-pity it can become your life. It can become your identity. It can become your
pretty
language
quickly,
very quick if you allow it.
pretty
Um,
pretty quickly.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to reflect on things, but wallowing in the self-pity of it. Like, yeah, when you said poor me, it was like, yep. And it's also like when you say poor me, it's also profoundly disempowering to yourself.
Mhm.
But anyway, a little cheery note to leave on, I suppose.
Well,
Hmm.
Angel, I want to echo what Tatiana said. I know we don't know each other as well as you two
Mhm.
do, but I definitely have some great respect, and I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate the time that you've taken to share your experience, your wisdom, your story, your vulnerability. It means a lot, I think, and that's it speaks to the spirit of the space we're hoping to create, where we can speak to
Mhm.
each other authentically and have these conversations, and maybe inspire people to maybe that can be some homework that people can write down a list of things that they haven't received. Like that's something good to chew on. I like that we've offered that as a nugget. Hopefully people will take advantage of that and give it some thought.
You absolutely have. I also want to memorialize the fact, Aurelia, that you have asked me some in the space of this exchange. You have asked me some questions that no one has in my entire life has ever asked before. You
Mhm.
have a real gift for this.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations, as you might imagine, with a lot of different people. There were some in there where I was like, "Well, okay, that is unique." So,
Yeah.
well done.
Oh,
I think what you've started with, Angel, and what we're ending with is this like huge value of connection. That it is not a one
Central.
person who's going to suddenly save us all.
Nope.
That it's, or someone who's going to have all the answers, but that it's asking good questions, it's getting good answers, it's playing with each other. So thank you for playing with us today.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for thank you for having me. Thank you for holding space and being somber and being silly and being inquisitive, being provocative. I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect blend.
Before we go, I just want to give you
Hmm.
a moment, Angel, to share with everyone what you're up to. If someone wants to connect with you, where can they find you? What's up? Share with the people.
So the major project right now is good old Darkport Productions, which is up on YouTube. We are running an actual play game. It is, if you have no idea what a tabletop role playing game is, think about it as impromptu theater with some dice mixed with a soap opera because it's long, continuous story. So go check that out. There are many different resources there too. They're not just the game, but also me pontificating on storytelling and on portraying different characters and interviews as well. We have your own interview, Miss Tatiana, in the bag. We have not published that yet, but
I play on the game. It's
that will
true.
be coming. She does. She does. We probably should have disclosed that at the beginning, but
I'm a
um,
player.
she plays amazingly well on the game. Yeah, and if you want to email me with questions, comments, concerns, rebuttals, rants, whatever, I am over at Angel at Darkport, and that is DARKEPORT at Gmail. And yeah, I'm pretty open to the discussion. We also have a Discord, although I don't know of a convenient way to have the Discord link there. It's on all of the YouTube videos. And then I'll be, of all things, I'm finishing up a romance novel right now.
Ooh.
Oh,
I'm at the last 40-ish pages, give or take. So
oh,
we'll see if that gets published. That was not a genre I ever thought I would be writing in, and yet having embraced the fact that I'm going to be writing in it, I have immensely enjoyed the challenge of telling a historical, because it's a historical tale set at the end of the Tokugawa regime in Japan. So roughly around the time that the Civil War is happening for us over here. I've really enjoyed like having these grand sweeping narratives and then having the most intimate tale and story between two people. So
beautiful.
it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge, but it's been a good one. That's kind of what's happening in my corner of the world. Thank you for asking, dear.
Thanks for sharing. I love you.
I love you
Thank you
too.
so much.
And to all our listeners, we thank you for joining us today on this episode of The Man Within, Masculine Stories, Women Listening. Until next time.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, we'd love your support. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if our energy resonates with you and you're feeling called to connect or work with us, you'll find all the details in the show notes below. Thank you again for being part of this journey with us.